not necessarily easy to.
Andy. Sorry, guys, just a little slow here as I'm trying to figure out who I have from what district. So.
You got me checked in, Christine Killian?
I do, yeah. I'm
Okay,
letting people in one
thank
by
you.
one, so just
That's okay.
apologize for a little slowness here as I get things up and running, but it's just hard to manage with all the different districts.
Yeah,
So
no, and I'm uncertain enough. I just wanted to be sure I was here.
nope, I appreciate it. All right. If I have succeeded here, everyone should be joining and you should all be able to see my screen. Just going to verify that.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Randy. I can see it.
I can see it.
Randy. All right, good. We're winning. Since we're trying to hold all of these district meetings together today, I'm going to suggest to the board chairs, if you're amenable to it, that I will run through the agendas. I'm going to go one by one, but some of these items are going to be for multiple districts. So where possible, I'll just note that it's multiple districts and we'll take those items in a consolidated fashion. So if I can have a little bit of leeway on that. For District 1, I do want to apologize to Tony and the board members. I noticed that we pulled here a outdated header that still shows a vacancy on the board, and we have the appointment to vacancy listed here. And Tony, you are duly seated and on the board, so my apologies on that. We'll just make a note of that in the minutes so that we're aware that we have that wrong. And with that, my board chairs, Josh and Brandon, do you want to go ahead and call the meetings to order?
Yes, call meeting to order.
Yep. Likewise for District 1.
All right, and I will just report, I'll just go through who we have here. We have all 5 board members for District 1, all 4 board members for District number 2, and then for Districts 3 through 5, looks like we're just missing Todd Bloom.
Todd's with me, so under Randy's deal.
All right.
He's signing in too.
Stealth. All right, so then we have all of the board members. We have Brandon, Chris, Randy, Greg, and Todd for District 3. And then likewise for 5 and for District 4, we have all 4 board members. So with that, we do have a quorum of all the boards. Those meetings are all called to order. For item 2, this is Directors Matters, Disclosure Matters. We did file conflicts of interest for all board members who provided them at least 72 hours before the meeting, both with the board and the Secretary of State. We'll go ahead and summarize those for the meeting minutes as they have been for the past meeting minutes, unless there's any new or different disclosures that any of the board members from any of the 5 districts want to make at this time. All right, hearing none. From several of the boards, 3 through 5, we do have directors that all have conflicts of interest. And so I'll just also note for the record that for those boards to take action, we will need those conflicted directors to be able to participate. Item 2 on the agenda, we also have, as I noted, for District 1, consider appointment to the vacancy. As I noted, that's a incorrect header there that just belongs on the District 2 agenda where we have a vacancy. So District 2 board members, did you want to take any action on today to make an appointment to the vacancy, or is this something you defer to another meeting?
I think Joan was going to make a statement in regards to that item. She's on here.
Yep, Joan is on. You are muted, Joan.
The board is waiting to fill that appointment until Brandon resigns from District 2. And Jennifer, I'd like to know how Brandon is going to function as a director today. He is not needed for a quorum for District 2, and he has, a direct conflict of interest being on 2 and 4. In the last joint board meeting, he affirmatively took an action against District 2. So we see this as a problem, and we don't see how he's filling his fiduciary duty to residents. I mean, the fact that all of the districts have special counsel and yet Brandon is on both sides of the table is really a problem.
Thank you, Joan. I would, I guess, defer to Brandon on what actions he's planning to take. I know he has abstained from District 2 actions in past meetings. And I don't see where District 4's special counsel is on today, so.
No, I would abstain from any of those district number 2 discussions.
That also includes District 4. Jennifer, you're counsel for District 4, District 2 and District 4. How can one board member be on both sides of the table?
Well, Joan, I don't believe we've taken any actions in relation to the settlement agreement at this point. So I think Brandon has stated for the record that he's going to abstain from those items where he has a conflict.
I can see one issue of conflict I can bring up that's recent. As far as funding for special counsel went, District 4 required District 1 and 2 to find funding sources for that to engage special counsel, but they just blindly approved special counsel for District 4. So we are seeing that there is definitely differences in how D4 is working across the board versus how D1 and 2 are being asked to work on this. So I do see where Brandon being on D2 is definitely a conflict on that piece. But I'm D1. I know I'm not supposed to be talking on this, but it does seem there is some issues in there and definitely some conflict with having Brandon on D2, especially in the actions that they are requesting D1 and D2 to do versus what D4 is doing.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Joan. I think at this point, I mean, we are on District 2, item number 2, which is appointment to the vacancy. Joan, you've made the statement that District 2 is waiting to fill that vacancy, hoping that there'll be another vacancy if Director Wazinski resigns. Did District 2 have any other action related to this item?
No.
Okay, sorry, I just want to keep us on point here. I'm happy to revisit the conflict discussion as relevant agenda items come up. I just want to make sure, given the number of items we have today, that we get through as much as we possibly can. I don't believe we have anything else for district or item 2 for any of the other agendas. Item 3 on the agenda is approval of additions to or deletions from the agenda. I believe we have some items that may not be ready for consideration today. We can discuss those as we get to them. I don't have any requests for changes to the agenda. Do any of the other consultants, board members, or special counsel have any requests for revisions to the agenda?
I'm here.
I would think for D1, and Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but consider approval of, so action 6B. I think we're not ready to discuss that at the moment or to move forward at the moment with that. Correct, Josh?
Right. I think that's right. So Jennifer, I think we can accept the agenda, but we will defer action on certain items. So let me know.
Yeah, and that's what I was suggesting, is that there might be some items such as 6B where I've at least not seen a draft. So there's nothing in the meeting packet. So I assume that there's going to be a deferral of that item by all relevant boards, but.
Okay, so I would say we can accept the agenda. There's certainly no additions on behalf of D1 that I'm aware of, and we can tackle deferments as we go.
All right. With that, if I could get a motion from District 1 board to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll motion, Jennifer. Josh.
Thank you.
I'll second it, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. All in favor for District 1, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you. All right, for district number 2, if I could have a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Mitchell here, I motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mitchell. Do I have a second?
I'll second Andy.
Thank you, Andy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay. For districts 3 through 5, Todd is not on all of the boards. So if I had a motion from one of the other 4 board members, I could count that for districts 3 through 5.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Chris. Do I have a second?
I'll second. It's Randy.
Thank you, Randy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Thank you. That takes us up to item 4 on the agenda for all 5 districts. I think we'll just go ahead and take these simultaneously. We have a number of agenda items on the agenda today, but this is public comment for matters not on the agenda. We are trying to limit that to 3 minutes per person, so I will keep a timer in the event that folks are going over that so we can keep on track. If there are any members of the public that want to make comments for matters not on the agenda, if you could raise your hand and come off mute, I'll call on you on a one-by-one basis. All right, it looks like I did such a good job of putting everything on the agenda that there's no public comment for matters not on the agenda. That takes us up to item 5. This is approval of the minutes on all the different boards. I'll take these one by one. District number 1 has 4 sets of minutes: the October 24th, 2023 special meeting, October 25th consolidated study session, which is all the districts have, November 1, 2023 annual meeting, all the districts also have that, and the November 29th, 2023 consolidated special study session. That's also common to all the districts. From district number 1, I'm happy to take any questions, comments, or revisions to the minutes. If there are none, I'd be looking for a motion to approve all 4 sets or any portion thereof.
I move that we approve the minutes of October 24th, October 25th, November 1st, and November 29th.
All right, thank you, Sam. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Josh.
Josh, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. For district number 2, we have one additional set here that the November 14th special meeting minutes. Just like district number 1, I'm happy to take any questions, comments, or revisions to those draft minutes. If there are none, I'd be looking for a motion to approve one or all sets.
Mitchell here, I motion to approve all 5 sets of meeting minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second? I'm sorry, who was the second?
Keith.
Keith, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, thank you all. For districts 3 through 5, we similarly have sets of meeting minutes that are listed on the agenda for each of those meetings, each of those districts. Happy to take a motion to approve all or some portion thereof. Again, if Todd is not the motion maker, I could consider that motion for all 3 districts if so desired.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you, Chris. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Greg, I have a motion by Chris and a second by Greg. I'm assuming that's for all districts for all minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that takes us up to item 6, which is legal matters. 6A should be the same on all agendas. I know this resolution is included at least in all meeting packets. So I'll go over it in general form once for District 1, and then we'll kind of go one by one for the blanks that we're filling in. I think most of the directors have been through a set of meetings with an annual resolution, but I know there's some new board members, so I'm just going to go over this in a little more detail than I might typically. The annual administrative resolution is something my firm puts together to sort of inventory all of the administrative requirements and legal requirements that boards have to abide by under state law. So the first several pages are lists of whereases that go over all these type of requirements and also recognize the district's due organization, that you have to provide a mailing address for the district, that the district has to provide certain notices, such as a transparency notice, that the district has to have budgets in accordance with law provided by October 15th of each year, that if requested, the district has to make certain filings of lists of contracts in effect, public securities information upon request, that legal notices are published in a newspaper. We designate that newspaper in the next couple of pages. Also designating the meeting schedule for the year, methods of posting, how meetings will be conducted, the recognizing the new town hall meeting that was added this year to the legislative session, where the office of the district is, that oaths have to be taken by those newly appointed directors and directs legal counsel to make those necessary filings, that the district has insurance and or a bond in place as required by law, that the district does review that insurance policy on at least a biannual basis, also elects the officers, recognizes that if the board so choose that they may receive compensation, the board members may receive compensation for their services on a per meeting basis. Also conflict of interest filings, as we reported at the beginning of the meeting. That electronic signatures are allowed, that the district does not have an electronic mail communication system, and then recognizing that the district's board members' emails are subject to the Open Records Act, even though there is not an email system. I think that's kind of the highlights of most of these requirements here. So then after these whereases that sort of recognize what the law is, then the next several paragraphs go on to designate who's responsible for taking those actions. So as I noted, for example, district's legal counsel is the one that provides the updates to the transparency notice. The district's accountant is the one that submits the budget and so forth. We also designate such things as the newspaper of general circulation, which is the newspaper the district has always used. Also, the posting place for meeting notices, which is the district's website, designating a backup physical location if that website ever were to be down. Then we finally get into some of the things that we have flagged for input from the boards, and those are in paragraphs 13 and 14. These are the regular meeting of the district, which we have slated to be that, I think, first Wednesday in November, which is when the boards have typically been holding a consolidated regular meeting. That doesn't preclude the district from having special meetings on an as-needed basis. And then we also just slated in the sort of what I'm calling the town hall meeting. Under statute, it's called the annual meeting, to be held right before the regular meeting. That might be something that the boards wish to hold at a different time, but as a placeholder, we've at this point just put in right before the regular meeting. We also affirm the election of officers. We've filled in your current slate of officers. Here we have recognized that Ms. Baca was appointed in District Number 1 appropriately. And we would just ask that the board members, if they wish to change offices, let us know that they wish to make any changes there. So with that, I'll open up to all the boards to ask any questions about this resolution or the contents thereof. I'm happy to answer those to begin with, and then we can go district by district and get some input on the items that I had highlighted.
So
Jennifer, go ahead, Jason.
I was going to ask, the Wednesday meeting, the regular meeting, this is contemplating back an in-person meeting, correct? Or is the goal to stay at Highland Circle and then modify it back to a Zoom meeting?
Well, that's one of the questions we have for the board. We've sort of aspirationally set it to be an in-person meeting the last couple of years, as things were getting back to normal with COVID. The board has then opted to make it a Zoom meeting since we've had better attendance via Zoom. So I think that's an open question for the board on the board's preferences. I would note that I'm not recalling exactly, but I think that there's limited AV equipment at the clubhouse and limited space. So a hybrid meeting might not be that easy to hold. I would defer to management if they want to correct me if I have that wrong, but I just recommend that unless there's adequate AV equipment, that a hybrid meeting is really not that great of an option because you end up with folks talking and not hearing each other.
I feel this is Christine, I feel at some point we have to have a hybrid meeting. We have to include the entire community somehow. And the Zoom meetings alone don't satisfy that. We can't talk to each other. We can't share ideas with each other and all the rest. And I realize the clubhouse reception is limited. I do understand that. So I don't know where we go from there, but I think just having virtual is limiting in its own way. Perhaps worse.
I also think that the time that it's being held is one of the biggest drawbacks for the residents of Erie Highlands because it's doing it smack in the middle of the day. And there's a lot of people who are not available at that time. And so I know that a lot of our residents has voiced that concern that they can't join the meetings because they're working 9 to 5.
I can probably add to that discussion too. I totally appreciate where you're coming from on that, Tony. Because you're right. I think I had a side discussion with Jason about this recently, and I think the reason that we hold it in the day is that we typically, all of the district service providers are professional firms with, business hours that are between 8 and 5, and that's somewhat incompatible with what residents want. So Jason and I were thinking that we would hold the annual meeting daytime, or at least, and Jason, tell me if I'm speaking for you incorrectly, but hold the annual meeting daytime, but then commit to having some evening in-person study sessions with the community to provide updates. And we could even summarize some of the actions of the annual meeting so that, we are giving, everybody a chance to be heard.
Yep, exactly. I think that would be the biggest bang for the buck. Knowing that it's a balance between the paid consultants that we have that have to be a part of this, but also I'm just like the community. I have to work a 9 to 5 job. I'm double teaming right now, actually, which is not always the best. So it is a fine balancing act, but I do believe that piece, and kind of what Josh and I toyed with as well, is actually tabering this up as not a board meeting, but an open forum, but it's still posted so that all the board members are able to attend without having to worry about the all of us not being in the same room at the same time. Fun. That way it's an actual post-it meeting. We're able to have it with the community after hours. We just won't have the consultants as a part of it unless they choose to volunteer their time to come and be a part of it.
And, we could also do it in the evening when people are off of work. If that's the thing without the consultants, we could definitely do weekends or evenings, whatever we think we'd get most bang for the buck out of.
So I think the way we handle this, Jennifer, if I'm hearing everyone correctly, and anyone can jump in and say that, is I think for the annual resolutions we have in front of us, I think as presented works. I think it's particularly for D1, I'll put it out there that D1 should do some coordination to put some special meetings on the calendar, evening hours that we would post as study sessions to satisfy kind of the resident desires versus putting those into the resolutions here. Would that work?
Yeah, that definitely works. And as Josh and some of the other board members who have been on the board for a couple of years now, we can change these as necessary. We've changed them in the past. So it's just, there's a requirement that the district hold at least one regular meeting. So we like to at least identify that. And I will say, on behalf of myself, and I can't speak for obviously the other service providers, yes, we all work, quote unquote, 8 to 5, 9 to 5 jobs and prefer to be done at a certain time. With that said, we also understand that, residents likewise have 8 or 9 to 5 jobs. And so, attending meetings as needed in the evening, it sometimes takes a little bit of special consideration because we also have personal schedules, but we're, at least I'm happy to attend a meeting as needed in the evening, as long as we, schedule that and can accommodate other personal plans I might have in the evening and work around those type of things. So, just wanted to throw that out there as well. It doesn't sound like the desire is to have a lot of consultants at these special meetings you're referring to, but I just wanted to make sure that was clear as well.
Jennifer, I had one other question with respect to this. So I haven't gone through this and thought of all the ways it would be impacted, but obviously, on the agenda, there's contemplation of a settlement agreement sometime in the future, which may impact some of the items within this resolution. Can you just give us maybe a 30,000-foot overview of what do we do to modify this in the future if and when needed?
Yeah, I mean, we would just revise the annual resolution. So for example, I'll put myself on the chopping block. If District 1 decides that they no longer need my general counsel services and want to entirely move to a different law firm to provide their legal services, I would just provide the Word document of this to, your new legal counsel and say, feel free to edit this as desired or use your own form. And I would assume that new general counsel coming in would just have you adopt a revised version on a going forward basis.
Okay, thank you. Sounds pretty straightforward.
Yep, pretty easy. And it's just like any other action of the board. You take this action today, you could change it tomorrow, you could change it the next day. So with that, I think I'm hearing from District 1 that the resolution as presented looks okay. And we will assess any changes on a going forward basis, which I think is going to be a common theme during today's meeting. So if I have that right, and there's no desire to change officers, I would just be looking for a motion to approve the resolution from District number 1.
Should we pre-modify this to be a Zoom meeting for item 13 and item 14 instead of in person before approving, just knowing that more than likely those will be with the in-person being after, or approve and modify afterwards?
I thought I heard from Josh that it sounded like we wanted to keep it as is, but if we want to modify the Zoom, we can do that. So either way, I'm open.
I prefer to keep it as is and change it after we are able to discuss it with each other.
Sounds good. Then I motion we accept the annual resolution as is.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Josh. All in favor from District number 1?
Aye.
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 All right, great. Going to the same item for District number 2. I'm not going to go through the resolution again. We have the same items highlighted. So I'd be looking for input from District number 2 on this item. If there are no additional comments or revisions, no desire to change your current slate of officers, I'd just be looking for a motion to approve as presented.
Mitchell here. I motion to approve as presented.
Thank you, Mitchell. Do I have a second?
Phil, second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All
Aye.
right. Thank you. And same spiel for District 3 through 5. Happy to take any revisions. If there are none, I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
Jennifer, we were gonna consider doing a changing up of the roles. So I think I'm in the role of the board president
Okay.
for I think 3, 4, and 5.
You are, in fact, yes.
Okay, and I think we were gonna put Greg Zaya in the role of president, and you can assign me to the assistant secretary role.
Okay, so I hear Greg is president. Greg is on all 3 of those boards. So I assume that's for all districts 3, 4, and 5.
Yes.
And then for secretary treasurer, we currently have Chris Carlton in that position for all 3 boards. Is that staying the same?
I think that works.
Okay. And then we do have some board members that don't have offices at this point. Is it safe to assume that the desire is to make all remaining board members assistant secretaries?
Yes.
All right. With those revisions to the District 3, 4, and 5 resolutions, do I have a motion to approve?
Can I ask a question on that?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Keith, sure. You're not on District 3, 4, 5, but go ahead.
With the terms not being up, wouldn't those need to be like elections and stuff? And especially considering District 3 is made up of actual homes. It overlays the carriage homes.
This is just election of the officers. So the board elects officers among those duly elected individuals. So the individuals that were elected as of the last election are listed at the top. That's the board. And the board then elects the officers. So in short,
Okay.
the answer to your question is no, but just to
Okay.
give you some more information.
Yeah, new to all this, so still trying to understand the ins
No,
and outs.
that is a good question. Thank you.
I'll second the motion, Jennifer.
Thank you, Randy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Then on the districts 1, 2, and 4 agendas, we did include as a placeholder sort of a generic item of consider approval of settlement agreement between Erie Highlands Metropolitan District numbers. Oh, I guess it's on all 5 district boards because someone had given me language districts number 1 through 5, Clayton Properties Group, and any related settlement documents. I think I'm understanding from the discussion I've heard so far that there is nothing to take action on at this time, but I would open it up to special counsel or the board members that have been involved in these negotiations to tell me if there's any action or if we're just tabling this for a future meeting.
Yeah, Jennifer, on behalf of District 1, we'll table this item. Just for a quick update for those not involved, Districts 1 and District 2 did hold a special meeting yesterday with a combined executive session to consider the settlement agreement, and proposed edits to that settlement agreement are forthcoming, hopefully before the end of the week. But no action to take on the agenda item.
Thank you. And on behalf of districts 2, 4, the other districts, any additional comments or considerations, or are we just tabling this likewise for the other districts?
Mitchell from District 2, we'd also like to table this item.
Okay. All right. If there's no additional comments, then I'll just consider this item tabled by all 5 districts. We don't need to take action on that. I'll just note that there was no action taken at today's meeting. Next up in your agendas, and I think all 3 or all 5 districts have this same item at the same position. If not, I will catch it as I flip through the agendas. What this is the member representative designation form for the Colorado Special Districts Property and Liability Pool. So pursuant to the IGA with the pool, you designate a member representative and an alternate member representative to the pool. We've learned over the course of time that the SDA pool, so your insurance provider, will only send emails or discuss items with whoever is your member representative. And we've likewise found that sometimes that person is me, sometimes it's Carly from my office, sometimes it's Megan, sometimes it's another attorney. And so we're all getting emails on behalf of various different districts, and it's a little bit disorganized. And then we've spent a lot of time emailing each other back and forth, which is inefficient. So what we're asking every one of our districts to do is to update the member representative designation form so that my paralegal Megan is your primary member representative. Megan would then receive all of these type of communications and send them on to board members, managers, legal, general counsel, myself, or whoever the appropriate party is. This designation can be changed at any time, but just for consistency at this point, we'd be asking the districts to approve this change. So happy to take any questions or comments on this, and if there are none, I'll start with district number 1, and we'll be looking for a motion to approve this.
Procedural question, Jennifer, on this, or I guess not procedure on your end, but so instead of using a direct person's email, is there any reason why you can't use a shared inbox that all your staff have access to, or whichever group we're using? So you can still have Megan named, but the inbox is monitored by multiple people. So let's say Megan goes on a 4-week vacation around the world and decides not to come back, it's still available to your team versus having someone actively log in.
That is a great question, Jason. That is possible from an IT standpoint. We have not had great luck with shared inboxes because it seems like everyone thinks somebody else is dealing with it. And so we prefer to keep it one designated email address. What we do when somebody's out for an extended period is there's either an auto forward function or I'll actually be given access to the inbox to monitor it. So that's how we handle that type of sort of prolonged absence.
Okay. Yeah, I deal with outside people contacting my team multiple times and manage a decent sized team. It's been our easiest win, but it's procedural, setting up the rules of who monitors, what the process is, all that fun. But I will go back and have my corner. But just thinking, since you said it has to be one person or one box, it relying on one pillar always kind of leads to failure, I feel.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I'll make a note of that for consideration in future years. We're now almost to the end of our cycle, and so if I changed it for this district, you would be the anomaly. But we can definitely think about some standard operating procedures going into 2024. Might bring back an additional change and have it be insurance at isp-law.com for future years. So I appreciate the feedback.
Jennifer, no questions with respect to form or process, but can you just remind us what this entity is and why we work with it? Just for background.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is the property and liability pool is the pool that you've contracted with to get your insurance coverage.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Is
Sorry.
that individual,
You left
Jennifer,
it
is that is that individual insurance for board members or as a district, or who actually is insured?
So all 5 districts have insurance coverage. All of the directors are covered under the directors and officers liability insurance, each individually, for actions you take within your scope of directorship. And then there's also the property is scheduled. And so district management updates those schedules to make sure that all the district, I'm using district as in all the districts, owned property is scheduled on one of the property schedules appropriately. So you have coverage for those locations as well. And then like the clubhouse, obviously, and pool, those type of things.
I think we've answered questions. Jennifer, I'll motion to accept this change to the member representative designation form.
Thank you.
I'll second that for District 1.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. For district number 2, same request, same explanation. Happy to take any additional questions. If there are none, I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
Motion
here.
to approve.
I'll second.
Oh,
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, and for districts 3 through 5, same request. Happy to take questions. If there aren't, I'd be looking for a motion.
Make a motion.
Greg, thank you. All in, and a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Chris. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. All right. District 4 has some items that are not on the other agenda, so I'll get back to those last. On a couple of the agendas that haven't met since July, we do have your the legislative memorandum included in your meeting packet. This was sent out by my office on July 21st to all the board members at that time. It summarizes legislation that was adopted in this most recent legislative session. This memorandum, since it came out in July, does not detail the special legislative session, but I'll touch on that as well as part of my explanation. So just high level, I'll go over a couple of these bills that were passed. First, for special district construction contracts, finally, there was a change to the amount, the bidding threshold. It had been $60,000 since I have began practicing law, which is several years ago now. It was finally changed to $120,000 and is now indexed to inflation. There was created, pursuant to House Bill 23-1105, a homeowners association and Metropolitan District Homeowners Rights Task Force, 2 different task forces. These were formed at the state level with appointees from the governor, different state officials. Those were constituted as of November 1, 2023, and have started holding meetings. Their goal is to investigate concerns regarding HOAs and metro districts and put together a report that will be due before June 15th, 2024. I think the intent here was to perhaps guide future legislation and bring parties to the table from both sides so that they could discuss at a meeting level, sort of a collegial level, changes that might be instituted to help alleviate some of the concerns that have been voiced in recent years. There was a requirement that metro districts provide notice that these task forces were going to be created There was not a deadline for doing that. It was just before they held their first meeting. We did also send out correspondence to the district boards to let you know that we were posting that to the website, providing a generalized notice where members of the community could find more information about these task forces. Senate Bill 23-110 is the next one that I'll highlight. This is the new legislation that was sort of the transparency for metro districts this year version. This added the requirement for the new annual meeting, which I call town hall meeting. This is that information session we held earlier, I guess about a month or so ago, to provide information to members of the community and allow them to ask questions about the districts. This also codified some best practices relating to debt issuance and has and service plans on a going forward basis for 2024. Nothing that would impact these districts, but it's just something to make note of for new districts and new bond issuances on a going forward basis. There's then a whole slew of employment related bills that I'm not going to cover since these districts don't have direct employees. There were some minor changes to the Colorado Open Records Act and to elections. The elections changes here highlighted Senate Bill 23-276. Nothing that's going to impact day-to-day operations for these districts or your elections, just some minor items that we have sort of put into our best practices, and we'll be following these statutes for future district elections. Likewise, some minor changes to the Colorado Open Records Act. Again, nothing that really changes these districts' day-to-day operations. It did change a couple of minor references in our official custodian rules, and so we will be sending out to the official custodian for each district a revised set of rules for your consideration. That's not something that takes board action. That's simply adopted by the official custodian. That'll be explained when we send that out, but just so you're not surprised when that comes out in the next week or so. There's also some other minor modifications, public safety, taxation type things. Again, things that aren't going to affect this district. Senate Bill 23-303 is now old news. This was the one that was linked to Proposition HH and only went into effect if Proposition HH passed. Proposition HH failed, but as a result of that, the governor called a special session and there was special legislation approved, which accomplished some of the same things that Senate Bill 23-303 and Proposition HH were aimed at doing. Shelby will talk about this more as part of your budget presentation, but some of the things that were changed was the residential assessment rate. There's also a new reduction to actual valuation, increased from $15,000 to $55,000 for residential properties for this collection year. It also pushed back the deadlines for certification of your mill levies, adoption of budgets, because the counties aren't going to have your final assessed valuations out by Monday, which I think was the previous deadline. So it pushed back some of those deadlines for this year. As we've talked about in some of our study sessions, the boards here were still desired to move forward along the usual timeline and have everything ready by the 15th so that in the hopes that the assessor gets that final information to Shelby and her team, she can provide those final budgets sooner than the pushed back deadlines. With that, I think that's really the highlights of the legislative memo. No action needed by the districts on this item. This is just an information item that I like to make sure I've reviewed with the boards. So I'm happy to take any questions on the legislative memorandum. I will note that there's great bedtime reading for anybody that has insomnia. All right, that takes us, I will circle back on District 4's agenda to hit those items after we've done the budget, but I want to go ahead and be respectful of time here and make sure we get to the budget items. Shelby, it's probably, I'm guessing, easier if I go ahead and let you share your screen. Is that true?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, you can always guide me to driving my screen, but I feel like I'm sometimes fail you. So I'll just allow you to share your screen, and then you can go through the budgets in whatever order you think makes the most amount of sense.
Okay. Well, I think unless the directors tell me otherwise, I'll plan on just going 1 through 5 in sequential order. So starting with district number 1, let me get there. So I'll preface this with saying, we really have not updated this from what we reviewed together at the last study session. we of course understand there's still items to work out, with the settlement agreement that is still kind of in negotiations. But just want to preface that that really no changes have been made. So starting on the property tax summary information page, I would note, and this kind of correlates to what Jennifer was just reviewing through her legislative update, we have estimated the assessed valuation based on what the preliminary assessed valuation was, and then with the changes from the special session. So again, that reduced the residential assessment rate to 6.7%, so a slight decrease from 6.765, and then increased the per property exemption on actual value from 15,000 to 55,000. So again, we've estimated this. Weld County has provided some communication. They anticipate to have those final assessed value certifications distributed by the 15th, which is this Friday. So hopefully we'll get those and be able to kind of prepare final calculations. For the mill levy for district number 1, we have adjusted the general fund mill levy to account for those legislative changes. We did that. That's consistent with the adjustments that have been made in prior years. So that would come to 24.994. Though I just want to remind the board that this is ultimately your decision on what mill levy gets certified. And then for debt service, really no change from the very initial draft budget that we had prepared. We've dropped that to 25 mills from 30 mills in this prior year, which generates sufficient revenues to cover the 2024 scheduled interest and principal payments while still maintaining a bit of a surplus above the reserve fund requirement. And District 1 board members, please feel free to kind of interrupt me along the way. So starting with the general fund, revenues here, primarily the property taxes, specific ownership taxes are estimated at 4%, I believe, just based on historical kind of activity. And then we have a small amount of interest income, and design review fees have been placed here unless we're directed otherwise. For the general and administrative expenditures, this is going to primarily be consulting costs, as well as just kind of the required items to keep the district in compliance. So that includes your annual audit, the annual dues to the Special District Association, and then annual insurance costs to the pool, which Jennifer reviewed earlier. I believe I've mentioned this before. We've done our best to estimate these costs based on, kind of what has happened historically. Though I would say that we, there's probably a bit of a buffer there than there might otherwise be, just anticipating kind of continued transitional items, over the next however long it takes to kind of get this wrapped up. So as of now, we have a budget of about $185,000 for G&A expenditures here. And then we also have a transfer to other fund of just under $236,000, which brings total appropriations to about $421,000. That's really appropriating all available revenues to just maintain the emergency reserve in this fund. The transfer out will come to this following page, which is the operations and maintenance fund, which would be a new fund for 2024. So there's that $236,000 transfer in. And then for revenues, we have the operations fee. Again, no changes. This is still at the $636 per year, which I understand is not necessarily set at this point. But that's what's built into this budget. We have a 15% delinquency allowance, while revenues would be recorded, regardless of if there's residents paying late. This is really just helpful for budgetary impacts and cash flow impacts. We have a developer contribution on here of $250,000, which was really directed to us and part of the ongoing settlement negotiation, and then clubhouse rental fees here. and then a transfer from district number 2, which would be for the available revenues from district number 2, anticipating a cost share agreement on the operations and maintenance side. The expenditures, in general, for all the operations and maintenance expenditures, this is, let me make sure I'm getting my bearings straight here. So we kind of moved all of these into district number 1's budget. This is based on costs that Jerry, as the district manager, had pulled together earlier this fall at what would be considered kind of 100% service levels, whereas for the 2023 budget for District 4, that included kind of 75% service levels, reducing some of those. I want to touch on billing. Josh had followed up with me on this item, and I did not get him a great response, and this really applies to District 2 as well. My recommendation, and we can do further work on this and pull in individuals from our billing team if or when appropriate, but I think once there's a final determination on the fee, how often that gets billed, then there likely needs to be just kind of a detailed scoping call to discuss that and determine fees. And of course, as I pointed out to Josh, the boards always have the ability to solicit proposals from other providers as well.
Shelby, can I ask a question?
Yes, Sam.
Are your general repairs for like the clubhouse, electrical, and plumb, are those based on historical norms, or where did we come up with those numbers?
Hoping Jerry or Brittany could answer that.
Yeah, Sam, that's the numbers for those general repairs. Those were just shifted over from the District 4 budget. So that's what they've been running at the last probably 3 to 4 years.
Okay, so we're using historical numbers. We're just not pulling them out of thin air.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because it seems like we always seem to be groveling for money at the end of the year because of our unexpected issues. So as long as we're basing them on past performance, I guess that's as good as we can do.
Yep.
Thanks, Sam and Jerry. In the O&M fund, so total expenditures based on the assumptions I've outlined, this also includes an estimate of $200,000 for pool deck repairs. Expenditures are $912,000 in this budget. With the assumption on the fee for both districts 1 and 2 at the $636 per year, that would accumulate based on the appropriations about $128,000 in ending fund balance. I'll go through the debt service fund pretty quickly and then probably ask the board members for questions and input. So again, debt service, a mill levy of 25 mills generates about $409,000 in property taxes. Again, we've estimated the SO taxes based on historical information, interest income based on current rates, and then expenditures for 2024, about $470,000, which includes the scheduled interest and principal payments on the 2020 bonds. This would leave estimated ending fund balance of about $367,000, which is about $90,000 higher than the required reserve fund. I believe, we've talked about this in the past too. We would recommend to leave some amount of fund balance above that reserve fund, just to kind of, balance out any fluctuations in property taxes or interest income, specific ownership taxes in the future. So let me pause there. From the District 1 board, any comments, questions, specific feedback?
Just for my notes, Shelby, I know one of the things I keep asking and I need to write down. So it's about $3 million difference between last year to this year, the 49.9 to 52.87. That $3 million per 100,000 evaluation. You gave me that number before. What was it?
I to calculate it again, Jason.
Sorry, I wrote down the 3 mills. I didn't write down the actual, just so when I summarize this out.
Yep. So 3 mills would be about $20 per 100,000 of valuation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the way I'm understanding this, Shelby, is that at the full charge for the fee, we still don't have a lot of headroom. We have, what do you say, 128,000, I think was what the ending balance was. So, you know, that just doesn't seem like it leaves us much room to back that fee up significantly and still balance the budget. Am I understanding that correctly?
Based on the numbers that are presented, I think that's a fair statement, Sam. You know, again, I would acknowledge that part of that is the G&A costs, which I think are probably a bit inflated on the 2024 budgets based on, you know, what I kind of said earlier with ongoing transition items. Because if those came down, then, you know, those tax revenues would be available to fund the operations and maintenance as well, and offset, you know, potentially be able to offset some fees there. But again, based on the numbers, your statement is accurate.
Yeah, I just expected more headroom at that 600 and something number than what you told us. So that's kind of sobering.
And Shelby, just to be clear for everyone on 2 things. One, the fee that's in here is not final. And 2, we have until January 10th to approve budgets. So I guess what I was going to propose to the board is that, and remind me, we've already had our budget hearing on this, or is this, we have not?
No, sorry. Yeah, today is your published budget hearing. So the board could hold the public hearing today. That doesn't mean you have to actually approve a budget. So that is an option if the board wants to defer action to a later meeting. January 10th is, well, I guess if Weld County is going to have your final AVs out earlier, that gives a bit more flexibility. I know the deadline for final assessed valuations is not until like January 4th or 5th or something like that. So the turnaround time on the statutory requirements is very, very quick. But it sounds like Weld County is going to be a little bit ahead of that.
Okay. And if we held our hearing today and then subsequently modified some of the budget in here, we wouldn't have to reopen a budget hearing, assuming we've already had it, correct?
Correct. Sorry, my dog usually gets a walk around 4 o'clock, and so he just burst into the room asking for a walk. Anyway, yes.
No problem.
As long as you've had the budget hearing, you've checked that statutory box. Obviously, the board can additionally take public comment at any point before adopting a budget, but you don't have to publish for a subsequent hearing if you defer action on the budget today.
Okay. Yeah. So I think I'll double down on my last proposal. I think we defer approving. I think we still hold the budget hearing today, but we defer on approving this until we have final AV included in here. I'd like to gnaw on the G&A a little bit more and see how settlement agreement progression discussions progress. I do know that D1's planning on having additional board meetings before that January 10th timeline, so I don't think that'll be a problem on our side.
Secondarily to that, Josh, I'd like to volunteer myself to work directly with Timberline to review some of those numbers that we have in the current proposed budget, like to copy and paste from previous years, and just get a better understanding of each one. So Jerry and Brittany, if you guys wouldn't mind, I'll shoot you guys some times that work on my calendar and see if anything overlaps. If we could find like half an hour for a couple of days maybe, you can walk me through just so I have a better understanding so I can relate to the rest of the team. Just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence and fiduciary duties as best as possible.
Consider
Yeah,
yourself
we can do that.
deputized, Jason. Happy to have you volunteer for that.
Can we have a member of D2 a part of that as well?
Yes, more the merrier. Who would like to come from D2? Would you, Keith, or anyone else?
I'd be more than happy to be a part of that if nobody else from my board wants to.
I wouldn't mind doing it either. Andy. The more the merrier, right, Josh? Or
No,
Jason?
The more
no.
the more the merrier, as long as we're under a quorum, unless you're
Yep.
going to post for the note meeting.
Yep. So as long as we're under quorum, I'll send out some times. Andy, Keith, I will include you guys. Actually, I'll just send out like how Josh does the piece. We'll follow up later so we don't waste time. But yeah, I appreciate it. And Jerry, Brittany, looking forward to having you guys on the phone with me again.
Same here. Thanks, Jason.
So District 1 board, in light of that, certainly if there's additional follow-up that we can do, if you want to see different scenarios, we will take direction from you all to kind of help get to a point where you're ready and comfortable to adopt a budget. So we can discuss that in this meeting, or of course, follow up afterwards as well.
I'd like to make a motion to move that we postpone the approval of the District 1 budget to a later meeting.
So if you don't mind, Sam, I'm going to ask you first if you would like to open the public hearing and take any public comments, just so that we can check that statutory box.
I defer to Josh on that one.
Yeah. I'll motion that we open the public hearing on the 2024 District 1 budget.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jason. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. All right. Any members of the public wishing to make comments on the proposed 2024 budget for District Number 1?
Shelby, could I ask a huge favor? Could you scroll back up to the our expenses page? So for anyone, public members of the public that wish to have questions or want to know anything about where things are going in the neighborhood, this is the page where things are listed. This is what our estimated expenses for next year. So please feel free to come off mute, ask questions. We as D1 will do our best to work to understand your questions and help our consultants to see what the best answer is. So with that, I will shut up.
All right. I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'm not seeing anyone come off mute. So just one last call on Byron. Go ahead and take yourself off mute and proceed.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I know very little about this stuff, but I'm looking at the debt servicing and the amount that's going toward bond interest and bond principal. I was just wondering what the total debt is.
So I can answer that, Brian. At the end of this budget document, we have a scheduled debt service requirements to maturity for the District 1 2020 bonds. So as of now, there's $8,275,000 outstanding on principal. And then $2,795,000 is the expected interest payments from 2024 through 2045. That does not include any of the interest or principal paid prior to these dates.
And then to give some historical context with this one, D1 went in the last 2 or 3 years, right, Shelby? I don't remember how long ago, refinanced these bonds to a lower rate and a shorter term. So it is, while it is an extended rate, we're not able to pay it off earlier just due to our recent refi. We're locked in for 5 years, I want to say, Shelby, before we can make additional payments.
Yeah, I believe there's a 5-year call period on these. And after that, and I don't have the indenture in front of me, so please don't quote me, but oftentimes then after that 5-year call, there could be prepayments with a potential prepayment penalty, which usually lasts for an additional 3 years. And then generally that prepayment penalty could go away. But again, we can double check the indenture and we would be happy to follow up on that.
Yeah, we did our best to take down the bonds that when we had the availability to. Right. Anyone else with any questions or any additional questions, Byron, on that?
Well, if I'm reading it right, it doesn't look like we're in danger of paying anything off early. It looks like the principal is continuing to increase. Is that correct?
So the payments each year do increase. So the total payments increase a little bit. Oh gosh, what's the term I was looking for? The total payments, have a smaller increase year over year. Principal increases each year as the interest goes down, because as principal is paid down, then there's less interest that accrues in that year to be paid. If that makes sense.
So it's the payment schedule versus the amount remaining on principal.
Correct. Yes. Thanks, Jason.
I see. Thank you. I misunderstood that. So we don't have a anticipated balance like per year available, right?
Yeah, not reflected on here. It would just be this 8,275,000 less the principal payments, but that's not reflected in that manner.
So
very much.
Yeah, each year we set the mill levy to make our scheduled payment, along with remaining the minimums that we need to keep in the account as well to handle any fluctuation in that. But yeah, each year it's just like a car payment. We have our set amount that has to be paid each time, and that mill levy is based off of what has to be paid.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Any other members of the public that have comments on the proposed District 1 budget? All right, seeing none, I would take a motion to close the public hearing from District number 1.
So moved.
Thank you, Sam. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Josh.
Josh, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, and then Sam, you wanted to make a motion to table consideration of the resolution and the proposed budget?
Well, I don't know if table or postpone is the right word, but yes, until a later date to be determined.
Yes, TBD date before January 1.
Yes,
Or,
ma'am.
I'm sorry, January 10. All right, great. I'll take that as a motion to table or postpone the consideration. Districts don't follow Robert's rules, so I'm fairly loose with the language. I think we all understand what the intent is. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Josh. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. With that, board members, would it be more helpful to have Shelby close out the financial items for District number 1, or do you want to just move to the District 2 budget?
Let's move to the District 2 budget, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, yeah, whatever works best for the boards. I just thought I'd ask the question.
Okay. All right, so for District 2, we'll start on the same page, the property tax summary page. So again, the assessed value presented here has been estimated using the preliminary AV received from the county and adjusted for the recent changes to legislation. As I noted earlier, we do expect the Weld County final AV certifications by the end of this week. For the mill levy, again, these were adjusted up to account for the changes in the legislation. So just to kind of expand on that a little bit more, within the service plan for the district, as well as the bond indenture for District number 2, there is a maximum mill levy for debt service of 50 mills. There's also a maximum mill levy for general operations and maintenance of 20 mills. Both of those are subject to adjustment to the extent that there are changes in the method of calculating assessed valuation. So that includes the any changes to the assessment rates, and then includes the per property exemptions that we talked about earlier as well. So for general operations and maintenance, we adjusted that up to be consistent with what had been done in prior years. So that calculation comes to 25.134. And then for debt service, based upon our understanding of the indenture, we have also adjusted this up to calculate the maximum under current law to 62.838. That generates property taxes for the general fund of just about 294,000, and for the debt service fund just under 734,000. For the general fund revenues, again, we have property taxes, the specific ownership taxes estimated at 4%, interest income, the G&A expenditures, primarily the same as District 1, same comments as District 1. We've done our best to estimate these based on what had been incurred historically, with probably a little bit of a buffer in some of these line items for ongoing transition matters, and then also includes your audit, STA dues, and insurance with the pool as required. In order to then maintain the emergency reserve, which is a 3% Tabor reserve of 9,300, there's about 144,000 available to be transferred to the operations and maintenance fund based on the G&A expenditures. So come back to that page, moving to the operations and maintenance fund just to kind of keep this flowing. Here we have the transfer of about 144,000, and then revenues about 180,000 in operations fees. We did follow up with the developer after the last study session. They confirmed that as of the end of November, there were about 302 homes closed in District 2. Our current assumptions had anticipated that there'd be 294 homes at the end of 2023. So it's slightly higher. In doing the calculation, it'd make about a $4,000 difference. We have not yet reflected this in this version, but wanted to point that out. We have the 15% allowance for delinquencies, and then a developer contribution of 83,000 anticipated under the settlement agreement. And then for expenditures, we have the billing line item. Again, I think that's an item that we need to follow up on in the coming weeks. And then a transfer to District Number 1, which is really all available revenues from the transfer from the general fund, from the O&M tax collections, the fee revenue to then transfer to District Number 1, anticipating a cost sharing agreement. Speaking to the fees, I forgot to mention there was some correspondence as well about the absorption rates, and it was confirmed that we should keep that at two homes per month through 2024. Going back to the carriage house fund, again, we have district fees here. Similar comment, we confirmed kind of number of homes here, really based on our billing records as CLA is doing the billing for the carriage house fees at this time, and then did the 2 homes per month to reach the district fee amount here. We have the 15% delinquency allowance, a transfer from District 3, and we talked about this, I believe, last time. This would be only to the extent that there are funds remaining in District Number 4 from carriage house fee collections. And then wanted to point out again, we do have an other revenue line item here of $25,000 in order to balance this budget. That $25,000 really is to be determined, whether that's through the district wanting to approach the town for potential fee increase or reduction in costs, some combination or something entirely different. The expenditures of $106,000 primarily came from Jerry and his team for the operations and maintenance. Billing was estimated based on the billing costs that have been incurred to date through District Number 4. And then last fund for District 2 is the debt service fund. So we have our property taxes, specific ownership taxes, system development fees is based on 24 homes, and then interest income is estimated based upon current rates. And for expenditures, total expenditures about $770,000, consisting of the scheduled interest and principal payments on the senior bonds, and then would leave about 1,236,000 in fund balance, which covers the required debt service reserve of 948,000 and brings the surplus fund up to about 287,000. So I'll pause there. District 2, any questions?
Shelby is Andy.
Hi, Andy.
I'm December 15th, you'll get the final Weld County data, I believe, right? I think I've heard that several times. I reversed engineer some information from Weld County that you previously presented, and I agreed with the 294 for homes. You think that'll go to 302, I believe, right? For year end?
Yeah, and that's really relative to the fees, not necessarily for the property tax collections.
Right, agreed. I looked at one of those ownership maps that are on the, I think, the Timberline website, and 249 homes were built out for single-family residents. So the only growth we can have in D2, I believe, is carriage homes. So I thought I heard you say on one schedule you could increase it, and then you went to the carriage homes, you also had a rate per home per month. Did I misunderstand that? Because I think we're built out for regular single family homes, right?
Yep. So, Andy, the assumption that's included in this budget is that there's 2 homes per month that are anticipated to be closed in 2024. So that impacts the fee calculation for the carriage houses because those are all anticipated to be carriage homes.
Right.
And then also impacts the calculation for the operations fee, as this operations fee, to my knowledge, is contemplated to be imposed to all residents within the district.
Oh, I get it. Okay, so the other one, we're built out of number of homes, correct? But you're adding the other fee on. Okay, I understand now. Okay, and a final question. Seeing as how there've been so many changes in laws on property tax, will we get the final computation of how you arrived at the 25 and I forget the other one, 68 numbers?
Yeah.
So we'll see how that was arrived at.
Yep, we can share that with the board.
Okay, and is there any possibility, given all the changes and the fact do you think that the rate has gone, particularly in the 55.9 to the 62.8, is there any way they have bond counsel or somebody else independent of the people who prepared the calculation verify the theory and methodology and everything? Because I think members of D2 are going to want to know why it went up.
So I think the calculation, I think we can show that in a way that hopefully provides some clarity on why. I will say a primary driver in that is the per property value exemption. So that's 55,000 per residential property. There's some additional language that follows. It can't fall below $1,000. But again, based on the service plan language and the indenture language for this district, I think the interpretation is that, that is the debt service mill levy is subject to adjustment for any changes in the calculation of the assessed value, which would include that property exemption. To answer the second part of your question, I think certainly, the board or us on behalf of the board could reach out to bond counsel. I cannot say for certain if they'd be willing to, provide an analysis or statement on whether or not they agree.
Yeah, I'm just worried from the standpoint of residents are probably not expecting an increase, or I think as a board we need some confidence I believe your numbers are correct. I'm not disputing your numbers. I'm just asking for another independent source to verify all the interpretations of the laws, all the changes, everything is proper. That could maybe be a partner in your firm if the bond counsel won't do it. Someone independent of the process of preparing the number, verifying is correct. There's no way the auditors, when they come in to do the year-end audit, they're not going to touch this number. But I think we need some independent verification that is proper. That's my 2 cents here.
Okay. Any other comments from the District 2 board?
This is Keith. I would like to ask a question on the actual and estimated budgets page.
Do you know which fund, Keith?
It's the debt service fund 2024 budget page.
Okay.
So down at the bottom on the actual column as of September 30th, it shows the surplus fund at 470,000.
Oh, yeah.
And then when we go to budget 2024, it's down to 287. Why would that number, I guess, one, why is that number 470 when we thought it would be at 238? And then where are we anticipating the money to go to knock it back down to 287 when that fund, my understanding of that fund should only be growing until it reaches like $1 million where we can pay the B and C funds?
Yeah, so Alyssa and I will double check that. Through September, only half of the interest payment had been made. Right. And then on 12/1, the second half of the interest payment was made and the bond principal payment. So for estimated 2023, we reflect that as 165,000. So I'd have to double check if this was the actual balance or simply a calculation of fund balance less the required reserve. Yeah. But this is where we anticipate it to be at the end of 2023, and then to increase by about 120,000 by the end of 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
sorry for the confusion on that.
Yeah, so I guess on top of that, that means on the budget 2023 line, we estimated that fund at 238. I assume that would have been what we thought was going to be at the end of the year, 238. And then the actual is closer to that 165, or we're anticipating it to be 165. So in other words, we were 100, well, no, what is that? 40, 70, about $80,000 short somewhere in our budget estimates.
So, and that's primarily due to lower revenues. So system development fees were budgeted at 105,000, and we are estimating 30,000 by the end of the year. So that delta really relates to the delta in the surplus fund between the original budget.
Can you remind? What are those system development fees?
I'm sorry, Keith, what was that?
What are the system development fees? What does that mean to us?
So that is a fee. I believe it's $3,000 per lot that the builder owes to the district prior to a building permit being pulled. So it's and then it's pledged revenue. So to the extent that it is paid and received, that is pledged to the district's bonds. But again, it's paid by the builder. Should be paid prior to building permit.
What is the $70,000 delta in that though? Like, why is it, if that was budgeted at 105 and we knew what the build schedule was, why is there a $70,000 delta in that?
Yeah.
To my knowledge, a difference in the number of homes that, or number of building permits that were pulled. We can double check that. And Alyssa's correcting me, it was 1,500. So that's the information we have. You know, we try to compare the records for what's received on our end to building permit records to kind of track that. But again, I think just differences based on the assumptions that were initially included in the original budget.
Can you give us a breakdown of, and I know I'm speaking alternative, this is D2, so I do apologize, but the 105 versus the collected 30 or estimated 30, like how many homes is that time that it's pulled? Is that time that it's built and closed? Is that, what is that number referred to, and what are those actual, like the complete number? So what does 105 actually correlate to versus what does 30 correlate to as far as number of homes?
When the building permit's pulled.
Yeah, so it's dependent upon when the building permit is pulled for those homes, which may not necessarily exactly align with when a home is going up. Alyssa let me know that the fee is $1,500 per lot. So the 105,000 would be 70 lots budgeted for 2023.
Yes, difference of 50 homes then.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right. 20 permits were pulled in 2023 for all the lots. Is that what's being proposed here?
I think there's also a different number for carriage homes too, a lesser amount. That might have some impact.
Yeah, these system development fees would include any lots, whether there's, you know, single family residences or carriage homes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm gonna have to echo what Jason says. That doesn't seem like the right number. So
yeah, because listen, or Shelby, didn't you say earlier that there was the growth of the carriage home was 2 per month? And you used a calculation for that piece, so we would have estimated a 24 growth then, correct? For a year,
That's
not.
next year's estimate.
Correct. I mean, that's based on current projections. You know, we get this information from the developer in most cases. We don't come up with these projections typically on our own. I can't speak to why, you know, the difference between the initial projection of 70 SDFs for 2023 versus where it came in actually. We can discuss this further with the developer and follow up.
Okay. Where would we find, like, if we wanted to have a audit of this information for just for our own sandy's sake, where would that be at for building permits pulled versus when and timeline on those?
So it's 2 sources. The building permit information would be requested from the county. And then, you know, we have the information based upon when the district received the fees.
Okay. And are you billing those fees quarterly, monthly, yearly? Like, when are those fees being billed back to the builder?
So it's really dependent upon the builder to pay those fees. Again, they're due prior to building permit. It's not something that the district is invoicing for.
So we're just having a trust process that we're being properly reimbursed.
And again, Jason, I believe that we try to kind of track that to county records.
No, I'm just trying to make sure we have our due diligence in place to review and audit. If that makes sense, Shelby. I know you guys have been working within the scope that you're given for all these times, and I apologize. I know I come off harsh at times on this. I want to make sure when a resident comes and asks, "Hey, how do we find that out?" I can point them in the right direction, not just shrug. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So the best piece is using the county to pull, see how many building permits are done for an area, but then as far as notification to CLA that these fees are coming in, that's just coming from the builder to you saying, "Hey, we pulled 20. Here's your money." Like, is there any additional audit from CLA on that piece, or no?
No. Again, we try to track it to the county's records when we can get those to make sure that, you know, fees we're receiving aligns with what they show as building permits being pulled.
And how often are you polling the county for that information?
I don't know off the top of my head what we're doing for this district. You know, we get yeah, I'll have to follow up with Alyssa on that.
No problem. And if it helps, Shuby, what I'll do is I'll just compose an email and includes the D2 people just so it goes out. And I know probably no action will be taken, but at least so we can maybe get smashed like a standard process answer to this question of just knowing what has happened and what is happening. Because there's still quite a bit to build there. So knowing what the process is and having it truly defined a delta of 70 grand is quite a bit in a budget, as you can imagine, or as you know. So I know D2 would probably be really interested in having the process nailed down flat and correct as much as possible.
Right.
Yeah, that's a
I
big
can echo what
delta,
Jason
50
said.
homes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely good to know the process and the accuracy of that number, because it seems like it's kind of on the honor system right now. So instead of an actual process. So
Yeah, this is Andy. I want to add one more aspect here. If you look at what's on the screen now, the bond interest and bond principal adds up to 749,250. But the actual property tax anticipated collections is $15,259 less. So we're even short. We're effectively relying on these funds to make up the difference until we have more units. So it is getting more and more critical that we have an accurate count of what these building permits and all that closing in the $1,500 fee.
We understand. We'll follow up on this.
Thank you.
Oh, Shelby, apologize for piling on this. One other quick, I have two quick questions. One, tell me if I've missed an email, but the questions regarding the closing rate on new homes in District 2 that we posed to the developer on November 29th, that has not been answered at this point. The discrepancy between the 4 per month used in the projections versus 2 per month used in the budget, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so I'll reiterate that request because I know we followed up a couple of times, and I know you've been the conduit for that, but that request is specific to someone on the Oakwood team that needs to be resolved. And then maybe derivative of that, the interesting thing I'm seeing here is that the system development fees, if you take that 72,000 divided by 1,500, that comes out to 48 homes, which actually does track for, I know this is permits versus closing, but the pace tracks with the projections. But it doesn't, 4 in the building permits versus 2 per month. So we really need somebody from Oakwood to help us figure out what's going on in the closing projections, because something's not making sense here.
Yeah, and I was mistaken. I was thinking the system development fees I had in my head 3,000, which then would align with the 24. So again, Alyssa and I will do our best to kind of follow up on that and try to work with the developer to get a clearer answer there.
yeah, do we have someone on Oakwood that can actually assist with that? Or I know we've asked other members in the past and it's fallen onto deaf ears. So I don't know, maybe if the Oakwood team can point us in the right direction on who to actually ask, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, Mitchell will reach out to Shelby. We'll have someone reach out.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, District 2, any other comments from the board before we move into the public hearing?
I motion we move to the public hearing.
I second.
Keith and Mitchell, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you all. We are now in the public hearing for the proposed 2024 budget for District Number 2. Any members of the public that have any comment on this proposed budget, please go ahead and raise your hand and come off mute, and I'll call on you as I see your hands raised. All right, I'm not seeing anyone coming off of mute or raising a hand. I always like to give a moment. I know I always struggle with finding where the hand raise feature is, so All right, it appears we don't have any public comment on this proposed budget. Could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll motion to close.
Thank you,
Keith.
Keith.
Second.
And a second by Andy. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. District 2, did you likewise want to table action on this to a subsequent meeting, or how would you like to proceed today?
We would like to table as well.
Okay, I'll take that as a motion by Mitchell, if I may. Do you have a second?
Second, Andy.
By Andy. Great. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Dane?
Thank you, Brandon.
Can we have a specific, do we have a specific date that we wanted to discuss for the budget meeting? Or are we tabling that date?
I
My
would think-
understanding was that we were gonna discuss between board 1 and 2 or district 1 and 2 and come up with a meeting and then set, come up with a schedule after that. But right now it's kind of open. Am I correct, Josh?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we need, especially District 1 and District 2, need to set probably 1 or 2 more meeting dates before year end, or especially before January 10.
Well,
Those could be separate, but I think we could certainly coordinate those.
but are we anticipating coming up with information that Shelby's gonna need for her budget? I mean, we gotta consider what their timeline is too, because they gotta be done by the end of the year too.
So I think we do have a lofty goal ahead of us to get to that January 10th piece. As Josh mentioned, definitely having meetings between the districts and knowing where the process goes. I know Andy, yourself, myself, and Keith will be working with Jerry and Brittany and team to review numbers as well to adjust maybe some of those items. So I think we have quite a few irons in the fire, for lack of a better term, but we'll be working probably through email with Shelby and team, Timberline and team, to ensure that everything that needs to be updated, reviewed, and addressed prior to when we do finalize the budgets is happening in a quick and timely manner, but not waiting for just a meeting itself. I know poor Shelby sees my name come across her desk a lot in emails and is quite accustomed to adjusting based upon what comes in. So I feel like that might be our best resolution, is working through email to adjust, and then once we're ready to move forward, like having everything presented. But you're correct, we want to make sure that CLA gets time, Timberline gets time. Jennifer's team, we have to have the date planned 5 days in advance, so all posting happens. So there will be a lot of moving parts, but you're correct.
Well, you also have to certify the mills. You can amend budgets, but you're gonna have to be able to know that the millage has to be certified, what, January 10th?
January 10th. So yeah, we have to have our meeting and have our budgets signed by January 10th. So you're correct, sir.
Oh, is it an impossible task?
Not impossible. We've done worse.
Okay.
Hard, not impossible.
Well, what does Shelby say? Or think?
We are, we're here to take direction from the board. January 10th is a certification deadline. So I think at a minimum, we would hope that the boards have the mill levy certified no later than January 9th, so that we have time to kind of prepare those, make sure legal counsel has time to review and get them filed. So working back from that, I think it depends on, how long of lead time do you want to have the boards to review any updated budgets? Alyssa and I will do everything we can to be as prompt in our response as possible, but would probably request no less than 24 hours to make changes to these budgets, and more time would be ideal. Very long-winded answer.
Yep. I hate to be that guy, but would it be behoove us, Jennifer, to set January 6th as a meeting date, knowing that the 10th is a Sunday, so that gives 7th and 8th for all background tasks to happen?
Unless my calendar's wrong, the 10th is a
Oh,
Wednesday.
no, you're correct. I am stupid and didn't change the month. Never mind.
And I mean, I did just volunteer to meet in the evenings or weekends as needed, but I prefer not to. So
Yeah.
the 6th would not be my
No,
favorite day.
January 8th. January 8th. I apologize. That's a Monday. It helps if I click.
Monday.
It helps if I click the next button on the calendar.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I mean, if folks can look at their calendars and confirm whether they're available on the 8th, I was actually just in the process of setting a different meeting for sort of midday that day. But if folks can be available in the morning, I'm available. If not, Carly from my office can coordinate. I guess Shelby is more important than I am probably for this meeting. So I guess I would encourage everyone to sort of chime in with availability. Shelby, I'll look to you first, and then we'll open up to the board.
On the 8th, correct?
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm available anytime that day after 10 a.m.
Can I, just because most of the board members are employees of organizations, recommend 3 p.m. or later?
Yeah. Does 3 p.m. work for you? You said Shelby, everything after 3 o'clock. So District 1, any objections from District 1 board members to 3 p.m. on the 8th?
Works for me, Christine.
All right.
I'm fine with that too.
Thank you. Josh, Sam, Jason, does that work?
Yep.
It works for me. Yep.
Works for me. I'll block it now on my calendar.
All right. And then Jeff, I see that you have joined. I'm not sure if you want to be in attendance for that meeting. Would that work for you?
I'm here. I can make it work. I might be 5 minutes late, but I can do 3 o'clock on the 8th.
Okay, great. And then
I can be on. Oh, I'm sorry, Jennifer. I can be on, but I can only be on for about 45 minutes, and then I have to leave because I will be in the air.
All right. I'm going to hope that we're going to be super efficient for that meeting.
All righty. I'm counting on it.
Fingers crossed. All right. So it looks like we at least have a District 1 meeting. District 2, if you'd like to have a consolidated meeting, does 3 p.m. work for you on the 8th, and Joan as well?
Is that too late though, really? In terms of January the 8th, knowing the 10th?
No.
I can do the 8th. This is Keith.
Thank you, Keith.
Me too.
Hopefully it'll be quick. We should have all the details worked out by then, and all we got to do is vote to certify, right? I mean, that's the goal.
That is the goal. You
Okay.
got it.
That should be a very quick one then.
And I'm available as well.
Oh, we picked a winter time. All right, we will slate that in. I will get an invite out. I don't know if we need 3 through 5 at this point, so we'll defer that until we get to those boards. So at least we've got a District 1 and 2 meeting.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Shelby, do you want to jump into, I guess I'll open it up again to Districts 1 and 2 if you prefer to move to some of your other agenda items, or do you want to continue on through the Districts 3 through 5 budgets? I don't know what your time constraints are today, so I want to be mindful of the fact that we're pushing up on at least what I had scheduled on, I think, on the calendar. So.
I think we can move to the rest of the budgets. At least my perspective.
Okay. Hearing no objections, that's what I'll do. So next one is District 3. And for the District 3 board members, you'll see that we sent this budget post packet. So this does include some changes from what was reviewed on a prior version. So starting with the property tax summary information page, we have preliminary AV of about $388,130. For the mill levy, this is the primary change here. Based upon discussion, we have reduced the general mill levy to 5 mills and added a debt service mill levy for 50 mills adjusted, which comes to 51.254, anticipating a future bond issuance for the commercial property within this district. That would bring property taxes to about 1,900 for general fund and just under 20,000 for debt service. I would point out, Jennifer, maybe you can help me here. I believe there's probably a 40-year clock on the debt service mill levy. Is that a true statement?
There is. So unless District 3 has definitive plans to issue debt definitive plans to issue debt, I would not recommend certifying a debt service mill levy.
Yeah, that's a great point, Shelby and Jennifer. So with that consideration, I'd go back to 0.
Okay. Okay. So we would kind of have this reflected that we'll change and just have the 5 mills for the general fund. So for the general fund, this still looks similar to what has been presented in the past with the property taxes, specific ownership tax, other revenue is really built in for contingency purposes. And then with the net revenues still being transferred to district number 4 of just under $2,000. We do have the debt service fund on the next page, though I think with removing that mill levy, we can just ignore that for the time being. So District 3, any other comments?
None for me. Thanks for bringing that last point up. Would we be able to take 3 through 5 in a public hearing all together and consolidate it, Jennifer?
Yep, I'm happy to do that. Shelby, if you want to just run through the remainder of the budgets and budget amendments, and then we'll just consolidatedly open all of those hearings at once.
Okay. I think I'll go to District 5 and then do District 4 last. So District 5, again, this did change fairly similar fashion as to District 3. So preliminary assessed value was just over 32,000, and the mill levy here also reflected at 5, same as District 3, which would generate property taxes of about $161. And then on the general fund page, same revenues here with the net revenues 165 being reflected as a transfer to district number 4. Hearing no comments from District 5 board members, I'll move to District 4. So again, I'll primarily highlight the changes and kind of walk through this. So for the property tax summary page, assessed value here about 32,000. For the mill levies, really same story as what I've said for all the other districts. We have adjusted these to account for the new legislation. So slightly upwards to come to 20.788 for general and 51.971 for debt service, generating about $671 for general fund and $1,678 for debt service. In the general fund, for revenues here, we have the property tax, specific ownership taxes. Down here at the bottom, we have the transfers from 3 and 5, which we just detailed. We have an other revenue line item of about 15,000 here, which correlates to expenditures below, which I'll reference, and then just under 20,000 as a developer advance for the shortfall needed to balance the budget. For the expenditures, this is the total amount is mostly unchanged from prior versions. We did reduce insurance and removed district management altogether from this budget and kind of split G&A into 2 categories. The first is operational. These are anticipated costs primarily for kind of the audit for the district, which is required based on the level of service or level of activity in 2023. So time from accounting and legal specific to that. And any other operational type items, whereas this section here for compliance would be really costs anticipated to just keep the district in compliance with state statute, such as, doing the annual budget, various items that Jennifer and her team do throughout the year, as well as CLA. So that brings the total expenditure budget to about 56,000. And again, I forgot to point this out. The other revenue here directly corresponds to these operational G&A costs, with the exception of the county treasurer's fees.
Shelby, I'll make a motion, or Jennifer, I'll make a motion to open a public hearing for 3 through 5.
I'll second.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, I'm sorry, who was the second?
Randy.
Randy, thank you. And Shelby, District 4, we had published for a 2023 budget amendment. Is that necessary?
Yes, thanks for the reminder. It is. This was included in the packet, the resolution. So the original budget was 675,000 for appropriations for the general fund. Based on current estimates, we are recommending an amendment to 760,000. That is a little bit higher than the current estimate shown in this budget. Though we wanted to give the district a little bit more room, especially as I think some of the legal costs we know are trending a little bit over that 2023 estimate as of today.
Thank you. So with that, I have a motion and a second to open the public hearings on the 2024 proposed budgets for district number 3, 4, and 5, and the proposed 2023 budget amendment for district number 4. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, those public hearings are now open on the 3 proposed budgets and the budget amendment. Any public comment on those budgets? Jason, go ahead.
Hey there. So I just want to make sure that as we're closing out the 2023 budget going into 2024, I know I emailed Shelby the $22K in expenses. How is that being accounted for? Is that what this budget amendment was for, or what is the 760 versus the 6? What were the changes on that for the amendment?
Jason, I don't know if I'm exactly understanding your question. The District 4 budget has the 2023 estimates built in compared to the original budget. So I won't necessarily go line by line item. I will note that legal is the biggest driver in the need for the amendment.
Okay. So I apologize, I can't see the headers on that. So the rest of the districts weren't given the District 4 packet to review and see these numbers, so unfortunately we don't have access to review this past your screen at the moment. Will this actually be sent out, or does it have to wait for approval, Jennifer, by chance, to the rest of the districts?
I'm sorry about that, Jason. I thought that Megan had provided it to all the boards, and I apologize that she did not. So I'm happy to send out the packet. It's public information, so okay. I apologize that you didn't get it in advance.
No problem. Yeah, just so we can see what the differences were between what was budgeted and what the estimated were for the last piece of the year. So that main driver, so 83. So we had budgeted 38,000 for the year in legal, and estimated at over 100. All right, on that piece of it, just looking at the revenues coming in the door, I don't see the revenue line item for the from the sales team for the hot tub usage and maintenance throughout the year. Did that get added to the revenue section at all, or no?
So yes, I mean it's either included in this developer advance line item or the other revenue line item. Jason?
It should be its own line item since it was from sales, not developer. If I remember, if everything that I saw in previous emails was correct.
We'll make sure that's reflected.
No problem. And then other revenue to be determined. That's just because we're over budget. Is that my understanding, Shelby? The 58. Yes. Okay. And then did we actually? I know we requested the developer advances, but were these all paid this year? Or are any still outstanding for 2023?
Alyssa, can you remind us?
We did receive the 75,000 that was budgeted. The request for the hot tub reimbursements has not been received yet.
All right, that's all I have at the moment. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other members of the public wishing to make public comment on these three proposed 2024 budgets or the 2023 amendment? Seeing no hands raised or anyone off of mute, I would be looking for a motion to close those 4 public hearings.
So moved.
Thank you, Brandon. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second from Todd for district number 3 and 5. Can I get a second for district number 4?
Second.
Thank you, Chris. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Great, thank you very much. Districts 3 through 5. How are you wishing to proceed with your budgets today? Is the plan to adopt these contingent on any final revisions for the final AVs, which is provided for in your budget resolutions, and then if necessary, revisit them through a budget amendment, depending on final actions with districts 1 and 2 and on the settlement? Or do you all want to convene on the 8th as well to consider final budgets at that time?
Well, in my mind, I
Jeff.
think it makes sense to adopt, but I'm going to, based on the earlier conversation, I'm going to abstain from the vote, but certainly the other board members can move forward with the adoption.
And I guess Jeff, as special counsel, I would just open up to you. You obviously know much more about what's going on in the negotiations than I do. So if you have any thoughts on procedure that District 4 should follow, I'd appreciate that.
Oh, I don't have any great insight on what Ds 3, 4, and 5 should do. I will say that it is alive.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jeff. It's getting late in the day, and so I'm now just placing you as special counsel for District 4. My apologies.
Yeah. No, Matt, maybe. I don't know if Matt's on.
No, Matt's
but,
not on.
how about this?
Like
I think
said,
it's everybody is working hard to get a response back.
Yeah,
So
understood.
I think, yeah. So I think that's all we can really share at the moment.
I mean, I guess the one question I have from a general counsel perspective, and not having been involved in the negotiations, and we don't have the benefit of Matt being on the line today, is that the District 4 budget doesn't show any funding for any services. And so I'm a bit of a loss of how service providers are supposed to be engaged to start work in 2024. We have those listed on various different agendas, 1, 2, and 4. We sent out some post packet items to District 4 to continue the services beginning, going into the next calendar year. But without a budget appropriating funds to it, I can't actually recommend that District 4 approve those contracts. So I'm, I guess, at a bit of a loss for how we are looking to proceed today. And I think it might, in the absence of Matt being on the line to provide his insight, it might actually make sense to defer action. But I would open it up to the board members for their thoughts.
This is Randy. I agree with that approach, Jennifer. I think we should probably postpone the decisions until we get the 1 and 2 adjustments and maybe some advice from Matt.
Okay. Any other thoughts from board members on 3 through 5 on that item? All right, I'm gonna just cross my fingers and hope that all of you can make the 8th at 3 p.m. work so that we can just book that for all the districts. So if that doesn't work, please let me know. If not, I'll proceed with just sending out an invite for all the districts. And I'd be looking for a motion to just table the consideration of the District 3 through 5 budgets, or at least the District 4 budget, until the 8th.
So moved.
Second.
Todd, all right. And then can I have a
Second
second?
for 4.
Thank you. Chris. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Abstain.
Thank you. All right. Great. Shelby, I think if you want to jump back to the other budget or financial items, we'll start back at district number 1.
Okay. So for district number 1, we did include a schedule of cash position and property tax schedule in the packet. So this really details cash activity since the end of the third quarter. Total anticipated balances are just under 397,000, all within the debt service fund. And the following page is the property tax reconciliation showing collections by month for property taxes, specific ownership taxes, and the treasurer's fees. And the district is just under 100% collected through October. This did not yet include November numbers, which we just received in the last couple of days. Any questions? Otherwise, I think we're looking for a motion to accept the statement of cash position.
I'll motion to accept the statement of cash position.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jason. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Great. Thank you.
Aye.
Items. Oh, sorry, I missed one. Thank you. Items C and D on the District 1 agenda, and then I believe we have corresponding items on District 2 and 4 as well. I'll go ahead and cover those briefly. These are considered terminating advance and reimbursement agreements that are outstanding. So these are outstanding advance and reimbursement agreements. I'm sorry, Districts 1 and 2 only, that have no outstanding balances per your last audits and your financial team. There are provisions in there to terminate at least 30 days in advance of the close of a calendar year. So we've obviously gone past that date for this year. These are really just cleanup items. I did send these along to your special counsels to look at as well. We included them on the agenda today in case any action was desired. This is, like I said, just a cleanup item, but given the negotiations between the districts, I wanted to make sure that special counsel had a chance to look at these items. We don't have any enclosures today, and so I would get to look to Joan and Jeff if you had any recommendations or thoughts, or if we just want to table these items for consideration at a future meeting.
Jennifer, I'll pipe in and Jeff can correct me, but I think what we'd like to do is table C and D for District 1, and with the anticipation that the termination will come with a release that's also part of a potential settlement agreement. So we'll kind of defer this to a later agenda.
District 2 also like to table.
Perfect. All right. I just didn't want these to fall off the radar, and that's why they have been included. So we'll just note that no action was taken on those items today. Item E under financial matters, and I don't mean to step on Shelby's toes, but some of these are just items that I've included for districts at this point. And now I forgot. I'm sorry. How did we structure these for Erie, Shelby?
So,
now I'm gonna phone a friend after I said I was gonna tell everybody.
Yeah. So for purposes of these packets, we had prepared separate agreements for District 1, separate agreements for District 2, and then had a really, District 4 agreement that also covered 3 and 5, based upon, I think, assumptions of where things are trending. Obviously can be modified if needed.
Right. So historically, these have been District 4 agreements providing services on behalf of all of the districts. These master services agreements are terminable with 30 days advance notice. I think, at least as of right now, the intent of all the boards is for CLA to continue providing services to the 5 districts through whichever mechanism the bills are going to be paid, which is still to be determined. So I'm happy for Joan, Jeff, or Josh, or anyone to provide any additional insight, but I think what the request is for Districts 1, 2, and 4 to go ahead and approve these separate agreements today.
Yes, that's right, Jennifer. For District 1, I think we were going to move forward with considering a motion to approve the master services agreement for District 1, knowing there's not really a financial commitment to come on with this, and agree that the expectation for the moment is to move forward with CLA as our service.
I just want to make sure it's clearly pointed out that there is a statement of work for billing services included within District 1 and District 2. For District 1, there's the anticipation that there'd be the operations and maintenance fee. For District 2, it's anticipated that that would cover the O&M fee as well as the carriage house fee. So just wanted to clearly point that out, as I know that there's still likely some conversations to be had specific to those services.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Shelby. Assuming there's no fee implemented, how does that statement of work? I guess what I want to make sure I'm not doing, just to be transparent, is I don't want to commit District 1 to any form of compensation when currently I have no ability to pay you.
Mm-hmm. So, and Jennifer can always, say something different, but, if there's a billing services statement of work that is approved, that is in anticipation of an O&M fee, if that's never, put in place, then there would be no services provided under that, and therefore no costs incurred under that specific statement of work. For District 2, we do have the carriage houses where those homes are currently being billed. So, dependent upon if that's covered through District 4 or 2, those are services that are currently in progress.
So I hate to be just because I deal in SOWs all day and creating for customers, I wonder if it might behoove us, as knowing that we have the 9 coming up. We are not leaving CLA, I can guarantee you that piece of it. But I'm wondering, would it be more behooved to combine those SOWs for collections into one master SOW that's being reimbursed once we know what that process looks like, just to have a streamlined billing process there and can consolidate those numbers into, hey, we know exactly what's happening, versus 2 independent SOWs doing the same thing?
I think the problem there, Jason, is that the G&A side of the budgets are separate for District 1 and District 2.
But I thought, wasn't 2 still sending to 1 for O&M though? Like, couldn't this be done through O&M processes? Or
the fees for that would come in through O&M, but the G&A expenditure outflow is with each district individually under the G&A budgets.
Makes sense. And just, for me, I worry how much are we losing in billing by billing 2 organizations for the exact same task, and like the overhead cost of that versus billing 1 organization.
Yeah.
Another.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Sorry, I was just saying another option that, and I will defer to Shelby because I don't know what their internal processes are and whether they need to have this approved by year end or not. We could also just defer action on this until the 8th. In the event that something becomes more clear between now and the 8th, that's also an option.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, the firm is asking for all renewals to be done by the end of the year, though I think we can get an exception in this case with kind of the discussions that are ongoing. So I can confirm that if that's the route the board wants to go. In that case, I would likely just need an acknowledgement from probably the board chairs for 1, 2, and 4 that we're extending those.
I think that makes sense, Shelby, for District 1. Obviously I think we're going to try and work with you. It's just there's some other things going on in the background that make it difficult to make it, to formalize it at this point.
Understood.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we take a motion to approve the master services agreement and statements of work from districts 1, 2, and 4, pending final revisions to the master services agreement and SOWs, which are dependent on the negotiations between the districts. And that way it's acknowledged that you're being engaged in some way, shape, or form. We just haven't figured out what exactly they're going to look like. Does that work for everybody?
Well, it'd be approving the MSA with waiting for SOW, right? Like, we won't just approve the master SOA, or it's late, apologies. The MSA, the master service agreement, with pending action on the SOW based upon what it works out. So we're not going to approve the SOW at the moment. Any SOWs?
I agree, Jason, because we don't need the SOW right now.
Yeah.
Like we won't need it for months on District 1. So I agree moving forward that MSA is kind of the show of good faith.
Yeah.
Well, there is a statement of work for, it's called preparation, which is all of the accounting services that we do, which we will need to continue to do for all districts. So that's separate from the billing services. I just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, the way these agreements are structured with the SOWs, the master services agreement doesn't actually get you any services.
No, that makes sense. So I'm sorry, I'm reviewing the document now. So there's the preparation statement of work, and then it goes down to.
So there's two separate statements of work. The preparation, which again includes kind of all the normal accounting services that we are already providing for the districts. And then the billing services statement of work, which was put in here in anticipation that there would be an operations and maintenance fee imposed, and services would be needed. So,
and once again, I just hate, like for me, just thinking out loud again, I know the G&A fund is set up currently that it's both districts independently, but I feel like since the services are being for the same community, it would almost be better if it was just one combined. I don't know. I'm going to shut up and go to my corner because I probably have muddied this way too much. I feel like we need more clarification on what we as a community are doing versus the separate district side of it, and see what we can do to marry those thoughts. But I know it's probably stupid of me to think that way.
Jason, I would just add to that, whether or not we have a separate MSA and SOW for District 1, a separate one for District 2, that's not going to change, the time that we spend on these engagements. So there's how am I trying to say this? I guess from our cost and our efficiency purposes, it doesn't matter how the agreements are structured. In one way or another, though, if we're providing services to all 5, we need to have an agreement or agreements that cover all 5 districts.
Yeah, understood on that piece of it. I guess for me, my thought process is for, let's say, life is happy for the next 3 years, and then year 4, we're ready to go out and reshop or do mid negotiations. It's easier to say, hey, as a community, we're doing this versus D1 wants to shop and D2 stays the same, and anything along those lines, if that makes sense. So it's here's been the traditional billing for the community as a whole. Here's where we know things about. Here, it's a consolidated view versus trying to combine 2 views at the end for shopping. As I have to fight it now when I'm at my current work with all our different products.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a form over substance question, Jason, just so you understand. So in past years, District 4 has just done this engagement on behalf of all the districts. So I think Districts 1 and 2, how that engagement is going to look in the final form, which is what I'm suggesting, the contingent approval, I think that final form is going to depend on what kind of an agreement is put in place between Districts 1 and 2. If Districts 1 and 2 have something similar to what all 5 districts currently have, you might only need an MSA through District 1, to your point. If that's not how it's structured and everyone's going to be bringing on their own service providers, Districts 1 and 2 would need separate services because they need to engage separately. So I don't know if that helps or hurts, but.
Josh, you're the accountant. I will lean whichever way you go, my friend.
So I kind of like your idea, Jennifer, that we approve the MSA and the, Shelby, I'll butcher it, but like the general services SOW contingent upon reaching a settlement agreement that, Jennifer, I'll leave it to you to word that correctly, but I think we leave the billing for any fees SOW on the sideline and not take action. So I'll offer that motion.
Okay. All right. So the motion from Josh for District 1, do I have a second?
I'll second, Jason.
Thank you. From District number 2, if you'd like to do something similar, which would be at this point, we'll just approve it contingent upon that final settlement with the billing services sort of left to be finalized. If I could get a motion to that effect.
All motion.
And a second.
I'll second.
Keith. And for District number 4, similar motion.
Move.
Brandon, and a second.
Second.
Chris, thank you. All in favor from all the boards, please say aye.
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 Believe it or not, I was counting. Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Sorry, that was more difficult than I anticipated. It's getting late, so I apologize if I'm becoming inarticulate. We also have engagement letters for your audits for district number 1, 2, and 4.
Yep.
Yeah. For 1, 2, and 4, these are the same audit firm that you have utilized in past years, Dazio and Associates. I'm sure that their fee has raised slightly to $5,400. This is a form of engagement letter that my firm has reviewed in the past. So happy to answer any questions on this. This is not really an optional item. These districts do require audits for bond documents and state law. So happy to answer any questions. Auditors are also sort of hard to come by right now. So while I appreciate if districts 1, 2, or 4 want to make changes in audit firms, I would recommend that you look to do that for the next calendar year, because I have some districts who can't even find an auditor to do their work right now. So just a word of caution, if you're looking to make changes. If there aren't any questions, I would take a motion to approve the audit engagement. I'll start with district number 1.
I move that District 1 approve the engagement letter for the 2023 audit.
Thank you. And a second.
I'll second, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you all. For district number 2.
I do have a question. Can you put that back up again? The engagement letter, or rep letter, whatever. At the beginning, it's addressed to board of directors and management. Technically, don't we outsource management? So shouldn't there be a management sign off to this in addition to board of director?
Yeah, so the district engages the auditor. It's directed towards board of directors and management on behalf of district number 2. The district engages the auditor. The auditor then requires a representation letter, not only from management, also board member and from legal counsel. So
Right.
this is really just this is just how this is addressed. It's not an engagement with management.
All right, but when you get down to some of the paragraphs, it says directors acknowledge or are responsible for. I'm just thinking, wouldn't we also want, it's addressed to audit to board and management, and we outsource everything. So I would think we'd want maybe an additional understanding or signature. Just, I'm not accustomed to seeing these addressed to 2 parties, and they're only asking 1 signature, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I guess I'm not quite following it. And the address to me is no different than sending it to the district legal counsel or the district care of legal counsel. That's kind of how I read it.
Yeah, but go back to the heading again, the very top. It's addressed to 2 parties. I don't mean the care of address, the board of directors and management. In effect, we outsource everything, right?
Right, and in the representation letter that's signed by the board members, it recognizes that management does these things on behalf of the board. That's a separate letter that's done as part of the audit.
All right, if that's your interpretation, I was reading a much stricter interpretation further into the letter, where we were actually, I almost thought, attesting to the fact that we had designed the internal controls. We were responsible for it. Being all 3 new board members, I thought.
Yeah, and Andy, to your point, the district board does have oversight responsibility. So you then engage Clifton Larson Allen as your accounting team to take on those actions, but ultimately it is a board
Right.
responsibility. So you're delegating that through your engagement of Clifton Larson Allen. As part of their SOWs, they take on the responsibility for preparation of your financial statements and those type of items.
All right, so if you're saying
So
we
those
don't
kind of
need
go
an-
together.
Okay, I'll trust your judgment that we don't need an additional signature then.
Appreciate that. Can I get a motion to approve from district number 2?
I motion to approve.
I'll
Thank you.
second.
Thank you, Andy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And
Aye.
district number 4. If I can get a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Chris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you,
Randy.
Randy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. All right, continuing to work through the District 1. We have your 2022 audit included in the packet, which I could have swore we had already looked at before, but maybe I'm just conflating it with 100 other districts that have met recently. So Shelby, if you want to go over the audit.
Yeah, I mean, just at a high level, this was completed earlier in the year. It looks like Steve's report was dated April 20th, so this was completed and filed in advance of the July 31st deadline. The district received a clean or unmodified opinion, which is always the best case scenario. I'm happy to review the financials, but would ask the board's preference here.
I don't think there's a need to review the financials. For District 1's benefit, I did review these financials and sign off on the rec letter prior to these being completed. Felt comfortable with the outcome.
District 2, same question to you, recognizing that we've got new board members since this audit was completed earlier this year. So, and actually, Jennifer, I don't see that the
It's not there.
yeah, I guess this must have been done earlier in the year.
We actually approved it at one of our prior meetings.
Okay, well, thank you. That must have been what I was remembering. I was like, I thought this was done at least by one of the boards. So good.
And double checking District 4. So District 4, yours is included. Same outcome that I discussed with District 1. How do you go through it? Otherwise, I think we just need a motion to ratify for both Districts 1 and 4.
Motion to ratify for D1.
And a second.
I'll second on D1, Josh.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. And for district number 4.
So moved.
Thank you, Brandon. And a second.
Second.
Thank
Randy.
you, Randy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, great. That takes us up to other business for district number 1. As I've mentioned, we did have the approval of engagement of service providers. We don't have anything included at this point. In pursuant to our budget discussions, I think the board is probably going to table these items, but happy to take any input, questions, comments from board members on these items. If not, we'll just indicate no action at this time and move them to the January 8th agenda.
Yeah, I would agree. But one question I would ask is if any of those engagement letters, just a quick review, could be resent to Josh or myself or any other board members interested before review on this. I know we get them in the packet usually, but just a direct email as well would be really helpful to kind of have that for the engagement services.
Yeah, I don't think at this point we have any engagements because we don't know.
Yep,
we the
understand.
consultants don't know. But yes, happy to do that. My legal engagement is ongoing. I'm happy to provide that. It's also terminable at any time. So.
Oh no, you're good. I'm thinking more about the ones that we engage through Timberline, just as a review, because I know right now everything's been done through D4. Getting up to speed as D1, D2 would be really helpful to know exactly what's included in those engagement letters and knowing what triggers we have.
Yeah, definitely. We can provide, I think it's probably easiest if I just provide the current engagements or the proposed engagements, and then legal counsel, special counsel for all the districts can kind of give some guidance on how they want to proceed, and we'll get that all together before January 8th. So with that, unless there's any other business that I'm not aware of for district number 1, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn the district 1 board meeting at 5:26 p.m.
So moved.
All right, in a second.
I second.
I'll second.
I was gonna say, you guys just want to keep meeting? all in favor,
Sure.
please say aye.
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 Of course, you're all welcome to stay. I'm just trying to close these out one at a time. So I'm moving myself, and Shelby, I can share if you want me to go back to sharing.
Up to you.
Okay. I'm working on my own screen at this point. So district number 2, I'm just checking the agenda to make sure we didn't miss anything. Handled that. District number 2, likewise, I'm assuming that you'd prefer to defer action on the engagement of service providers until January.
Yes, we'd like to table.
Great. So unless there's any other business for District 2 that I'm not aware of, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn that meeting at 5:27 p.m.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Thank you, Andy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. District 3, I think we have covered everything for District 3. And I think we've covered everything for District 5. Yes. All right, so heading back to the District 4 agenda. We've done financial matters. So Shelby, if you want to pick it up at, I guess, claims for District number 4.
All right. So claims here, this is really a full year's listing here from October 27th, 2022 to December 7th, 2023. There were a couple meetings in the year, but none of which claims were included. So it includes a fairly long list. Majority of these are 2023 expenditures, so there are several included on the first few pages that are 2022, amounts totaling $1,038,966.94. Just as a reminder, this goes through CLA to Jerry and his team, then to a board member for final approval. Any questions?
Question around 5.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
I'm not sure who that was. I heard 2 voices.
Or you or Greg, either one.
All right, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
Sorry, can I
go ahead?
Cash sheet and property tax schedule were also included. Nothing specific to point out, but happy to answer any other questions. Otherwise, we're looking for a motion to accept the cash sheet.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, that takes us out of financial matters. A question for district management, if I haven't lost you yet. I think, yeah, I see Jerry and I see Timberline.
We're here.
And I see Emma from MSI. Realizing that we have service contracts in place that end at the end of 2023, and we're deferring sort of action on how these services are going to be engaged going into 2024. Do you have a sense of whether any of these contractors will discontinue providing service in the interim, such that we should take some sort of action today to recognize that the board is authorizing a temporary extension to their existing contracts? Or help me help the board.
From our perspective, I don't think anybody would do any type of suspension of service. It's just a matter of, how we work it out behind the scenes, transitioning the actual contracts over from D4 to D1 and 2. But I don't anticipate anybody dropping off.
Okay, and I'm seeing Emma giving a thumbs up. Same for snow service for landscape. Well, landscape's obviously not happening right now, but I just want to make sure that we're not putting any of the district residents or districts in an adverse position here by not approving anything. So it sounds like you think we're okay there.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. We have some legal items that I skipped over. Items 6B, C, and D. D being the easiest. This is the ratification of a license agreement regarding the hot tub access. This use has already actually terminated. So this was just allowing Oakwood to go out there and make some repairs to the hot tub. We talked about those repairs that were made earlier today. So this is ratification of that. Item 6B is adoption of amended design standards. The changes here are limited to a change in state law related to where vegetable gardens can and cannot be located. So there really isn't a lot of leeway here. These are changes that need to be made. These don't purport to make any other changes that may or may not be recommended by management. This is just to keep the design standards in legal compliance. And item 6C is an adoption of a resolution for a policy and procedures for the imposition of fines for violation of covenants and design standards, hearing procedures, and collection of unpaid fees, penalties, and charges and appeals. This supersedes previous actions. The district sort of had a bit of cobbled together procedures for this, and management asked us to put together a comprehensive policy that allows them to clearly know how to go about the procedures for violations and unpaid fees. So that's what this effectuates. It's similar to what some of you have seen in other communities. So I'm happy to take any questions on items B, C, or D. If there are none, I'd just be looking for a motion to approve B and C and ratify D.
So moved.
Thank you, Brandon. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Randy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. With that, Shelby double check me. I think we are done with districts 3 through 5.
I believe so.
Motion to adjourn.
Sorry, my AirPods died before the meeting did. So I think I have a motion to adjourn those 3 meetings at 5:33 p.m. by Brandon. Do I have a second?
Second.
Everyone wants to second this one. I'll take Chris. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Thank you all for all the hard work today and the lengthy meeting. Appreciate it. If I don't talk to some of you, happy holidays. And I'll see you on January 8th, if not sooner.
Thank